Blessings! Welcome to Reasonings Right at the Trail Life. I'm your host, Talaku, the Great Owl. Just loving the vibe that you're here with me. Just showing off, one of my modified jackets in my winter line series. Yes, I felt a little energy, was a little jealous there. Just kind of flowed through me there a little, but it's okay. Because this is the second video, I already did the first video, so the atmosphere is like supercharged now. They're angry because they see what he's up to now. So they're mad. But anyway, it's all good. I'm just being a little bit whatever today. But listen, normally you don't see me like have a pen or anything, but I'm in my room, so I can't have a pen or anything because I'm have a little notes. This particular video, did I welcome you? Once again, welcome to Reasons Right to the Trail Life. I'm your host, Talaku the Great Owl, and this particular video is going to be on law and the Aboriginal man, woman, and child. So law on the Aboriginal family. Why law on the Aboriginal family? Because quite frankly, the Aboriginal family understand natural law, immutable, unalienable law that is created along the lines of the cosmic right, not in normal taxes. So normal taxes, man-made laws, is the juxtaposition against natural law. It is the opposing forces. So I could have said natural law versus man-made laws, right? So either one is, applicable. Aboriginal and the law. Aboriginal family and the law. It's kind of very hard to just start. So I'm looking at my notes. You know that normally you don't see me have notes, but I do have notes because that's not an ego statement to say not having notes. Why am I saying that normally I don't have notes? I'm saying that because over the years of being myself, doing videos that are for the right purpose, not just to placate my religious or spiritual view, but for informing our people. Why is it very important, right, that I say that I do it without notes? It's the power of memory. I'm trying to inculcate in myself and others the power of memory. I realized many years ago, oh, I did that, didn't I? Yeah. So I remember years ago when I was doing poetry, I had this girlfriend, right? I was probably doing poetry for maybe like 3 years at the time, like as a public personality, right? And my girlfriend that I recently met, maybe like a few months before, we were started doing poetry together. And she said to me, after I wrote one of my poems, she said, "You memorized all of that?" Hallelujah. And I said, "Yes, I wrote it." I had to write it to memorize it, right? Back in those times, right? So memory and memory retention, which I later come to know as recollection, are that what they call the photographic memory, right? It's been a state that I've been developing since I was a young person because I always had like a little short-term memory glitches at time because I always, when something happens, it bores me quick, gone, something else comes in. So my mind was always, like they say, a wandering child, especially for the first 7 years of my life. And sometimes when I get really excited, my speech gets really fast. And that was a facetry of the kind of a personality that I have. Right now, when I first met my first psychologist, he said to me, your mind moves at a certain, I'm not going to say it because jealousy is a thing that people, when you hear things and if you actually go and research it, it makes people think that you're special, so then they hate you even more, hallelujah, because of that thing. But he says it's because of the thoughts. I think so much thoughts, rapid thoughts, karatanini, and they move so fast. And so to express them fast, speech and writing, my writing was always scribble, right? Hard to understand. And it's not no doctor code. It literally, how do I get the light to show? Oh, there we go. Yes, like I'm writing Arabic or Moorish Latin. So to recall things and have a great memory retention is why I say I normally don't do things with notes, so that I can lay out the entire argument contextually in my head and flow it. And I can still lay it out because I've trained myself to just look at the notes, not to read it, and to be sparked. So I already introduced where I had already laid out in my mind to introduce at no more taxes, right? And that is man-made law. Law that is placated, let me go to my notes now so I can put it in the right context. Law that is placated around the three branches of government that suggests we have the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. And you know, the judicial already sounds like judges, jurisprudence, so you can figure that out, right? And legislative, I am putting it to the level of those policy makers, because we're going to talk about policy makers, right? The people that lead to the placating ideas of edicts that back from the king time, but now in the political times, go to the policies who, yeah, call them police, right? The police who do the policing, which is the enforcement of policy, but the creation of policy in the legislative branch of government. People in America, what you call it, like the Senate, right? We got the Senate here, because we call it Republican form of government, whatever, right? So we got the Senate. So the Senate and all of them people, the lower house helpers debating the legislative, oh, this is a policy, and they tell you that it is law. And it's not law, it's policy. So some people say, well, policy can become law. No, it becomes law now when it goes up to the executor, which is like, you know, prime minister, whatever, whatever. And you say, well, it is laws, right? Well, it's not laws. And then it goes over on when you challenge them and say, oh, that is unconstitutional. They say, well, we'll go over to the judicial branch and the judges with the Supreme Court. You know, in Jamaica, we don't have one for us because there's still some caveat, or we call a vassal state or commonwealth. So it's the Privy Council. So anyway, you go to the Supreme Court and they say, well, you know, this is not lawful, this is unlawful. And then they say, this is ratified and this is law. And boom, no more taxes. And that was in the edict, we call that, in the offices, the auspices of the king. And so the king had the right to decide, off with his or her head, right? And they decided what to do with the masses of the people as it relates to social productivity, mobility, and control. So they have that social element where they need to police, and the militias and them had that right to kind of use force. Because we're going to talk about those things. You see, force is one of the most important things in this unlawful thing we call government, right? When you get into the law and the actual meaning of government, you know, meaning to control the mind, to manipulate the mind, you get to understand that they have taken away your sovereign rights and have given you, as a result, they have given you restrictions. And the restrictions that they have given you are the evidence to you that you matter. Because without the restrictions that have an actual impact upon you, you do not know these policies that these guys come up with, or some of them coming up with, right? These policies that they come up with, right? You really think that they're law, but you have to agree to it. And this is the part that they don't tell you. You have to agree to it, people. So we're going to look at this language of law called legalese. And when you get into the language of law, I'm doing this because we're going to establish jurisprudence before we go to anything else from the three branches of government, right? When you go to legalese, you realize that legalese, as I've come to understand it, is a language documentation. So a lawyer who specializes in legalese is a linguist. And why is linguistics very important? Because in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word is God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt amongst men. Because word is the means of communication. It is the utterance of spirit. It is literally spirit. It is literally the power within your being, which means your spirit being manifesting as communication, right? So words have depth and clarity and power. And so by the words you are made and are constructed means your character, or the character being an image that is placed upon you, because they tell you it means your quality of personage. But a character is a state you put on, like a personality, like a persona. But we, being miseducated, thinks that character is the actual living being or the spiritual being, right? So the characters and the characteristic of words create the analogies that we go by, and the analogies are the connotations in connotative linguistics. And connotative linguistics are the suggestives that are telling you that this is lawful, that this is legal. But legal ain't lawful, and it isn't natural law. So it's all under no more taxes. So connotative linguistics is an inference using colloquialisms or suggestives to claim its actual truth and fact, or its actual law, when it is not. Denotative linguistics is what my channel is about. And in the pursuit or in pursuant of denotative linguistics through etymology, origins of words, where they're derived from, as in case study of the word through time, the etymon. What is the core structure and principal components of a word? Where did it originate in time? Is it Greek, Latin, Moorish? Where is it? Is it Aboriginal? How is it constructed? Where was it constructed? Because in the construct of the word is symbolism that connects to heritage, ancestry, and heredity. That's why Chinese sound like Chinese, Indians, Bharatians sound like Bharatian in their different groups, and all of the different nations in Azania sound like each other, sound different from each other but sound like themselves, and all the different nations in Ethiopia sound different from each other but sounds like themselves. And this denotative linguistics that forms the basis in the etymon in the structure of words is specific to environment and specific to meaning. And meaning is the fundamental principle of what is constructed in law. That's why these linguists called lawyers are paid to decipher the devil, which they put in the details, because it's linguistics. Grammar, you can look up that word too, what it means, right? Because grammar is like a cursory element that gives orifice or gives manifest energy to words. So grammar places things as adjectives, as verbs, as nouns. And so one of the first words we want to look at under the legalese is black, B-L-A-C-K. Some people spell it B-L-K, black, right? Because they're going with the major sound, phonetic sound, right? Right. So in connotative linguistics, black means like the night, the dark, whatever, absent of light, bam, boom, bam, 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 bop. You're a black man. No, you're not. So that's what that says, right? But if you look at the origins to see where it's coming from, it's part of speech, right? You would realize that it's an adjective, and it's Middle English, right? But it's an adjective. And so why is that important as we're talking about legalese? Why is it important? It's important because an adjective cannot denote people, place, or thing in a proper context. And why is that important? The human races, ethnicities, cultures, families, communities are defined under proper noun, just like a place or a thing. But especially for human, and like, the great Jamaica or Jamaica, the name is very important. So that's why it's not Jamaica, and it's Jamaica. So what am I talking about? I'm going to give it to you again. That's why it's Jamaica and not Jamaica, because Jamaica is connotative, linguistics, mercantile, admiralty system. Hamaka, Taino, Locono Empire, ancient Atlantean kingdoms, brother of the Empire of Haiti, founder of the modern movements of civilization, hallelujah, here in the North Gate. Connotative linguistics with black, an adjective to represent a nation and a people, means that you're property, you're a robot, you are a shuttle, 3/5 subhuman. And if you use connotative linguistics to define yourself, you are saying you agreed to mandatorily being told that it's a must, that a law, it's mandatory that you take a vaccine, that you take this and you take that, and you said, I'm law abiding, I can't go against it. But it's not lawful because it's not rooted in natural law, the immutable, unalienable, unchangeable law of nature, existence, and being. So what is mandatory is forced, right? It's a force. You didn't agree to it. It was not discussed with you for the consideration of your opinion. It was not brought to you that you should have a say in it. It's an edict. It's mandatory. It was approved, it was authorized, it was permitted. They agreed amongst themselves and brought it to you. And what did you say? You said, yes, master, yes, sir. Ward. Civil liter mortuus. Civil liter mortuus. Go and look it up. Ward of the state. That's why bodies go into court and not people, are not living beings. The straw man goes into the courts for this corporate fiction. Civil liter mortuus is a suspension of your sovereign rights, operated under the mercantilism, like under Jamaica and all of those titles, right? Just sole policy, de facto governments, right? Not de jure, but de facto. Those who forcibly force, because it comes back to force, mandatory force, they invaded and by force took the land, and by force is pushing you into a specific direction, and you call them policies. That's why they have to be policed, and they have to have politicians, which are the arbiters of the policy, and that's why they have to have judges. So who are these judges? Because you think because they say they're judges, but they're magistrates, right? Or they're administrators of a foreign entity, right? So when we talk about judges, judges must have jurisprudence, right? And so therefore you must be able to declare what is his or her jurisprudence, right? Where do you get your jurisprudence? What grouping of people are you from? Are you from this autochthonous group of people? Are you just sanguineous? Are you blood related? Are you truly a peer? Are you truly of ancestry of these people as such that you can give true advice, be discerning, be equal, be equilateral, be just? Where is your authority? Where is your jurisdiction? Where is your jurisdiction? How is your jurisdiction established? You have a lot of intellects who used to talk in the systematic de facto structure, love to laugh at sovereigns, but you can't laugh because you can only laugh at people who are playing into your paper trail, into your no more taxes. Where is your jurisprudence established? Where is your jurisdiction? You are a member of the mercantile, of Admiralty law. You're a member of the invader class. You are not autochthonous. You're not Aboriginal. You're not my peer. Hence, you cannot judge me, hallelujah, or speak to me what laws are that are connected to my social conduct or behavior, which are born in custom. It is customary to follow principles that are generational and are hereditary. Just sanguineous, consanguinity, continuity of blood. Did you know these things are important in establishment of jurisprudence and jurisdiction? These are the things that they cover. Because these currents of Rome, they have no right on your land except a lease that they have been given through treaty to operate. And a Merity corporation that operates under the Christian black codes of 1620, you know, the King of France and subsequently his son in 1685, you know, ratifying the black codes of how you should treat enslaved Moors, which were reclassified because if you are a sovereign and they put you into chattel, there are ramifications in the cosmic law. So reclassification, redefinition is what happened. And they reclassified and redefined the sovereigns, the Moriscos and the Morenos, the Aboriginals, as black colored and all manner of Indian and all these other terminologies, stealing, hallelujah, our birthright, making us subhuman property. When you go into Grimm's Laws Dictionary, Black Laws Dictionary, you get to realize that your birthright's been stolen, your estates, your Bonneville's been stolen, and they placate your culture in front of you, like I did Kinematic Masters of Edit. How much of you really did take in that video? I laid out the entire system, university, hallelujah, level dichotomy I gave you, but I'm not going to stop. I'm going to continue. So under normal taxes, de facto government, right, that are invaders that came and took your right. When you agree to these policies that are policed and are designed by politicians, when you go and mark a X, that's why when I declared sovereignty, I stopped working with any form of electoral admiralty system, because the moment you go and mark X, you have agreed that you are a straw man. You have agreed that you are a product, hallelujah. Just like the ships who bring in the product that are moored and to the birth canal, right, and are birthed at Pier 1, 2, or 3, are birthed 1 to 8, right? And the vessel, which is the package, right, in the certificate of manifest is registered, because a lot of you are not educated. So you laugh because some clowns, which the system have paid to, be what we call the Contel Pro and mix in the confusion, mix in, and them got obian wickedness. I talk about them a sovereign, but them a demon. I work for Lucifer, hallelujah, under the quiet there, which Lucifer in the bloodline I'm talking now. So I'm not talking for you go get me metaphor now. I'm talking Lucifer in the bloodline. They are working for the 13 bloodlines, hallelujah. Yeah, they are their lapdogs. So when they come and mix up sovereign policies and forget to tell you about your just sanguineous, consanguineous right of blood, the right of your estate, when they come and give you DNA analysis that is just a pure lie, and you do not know your blood work, or you do not know your haplogroup, or you do not know any of those things, and you think that you're so African because you got a philosophy designed by some Europeans and given to you under pedagogy so you can act smart and speak proper English or Cockney, so you can lose your authenticity because you're so glad to be a servant of who you've sold your birthright to, right? And remember, this happened long before many of us were subjugated also, because many of our own who were in the power positions, they sold out their government, they sold out their people, they sold out their clan to be a part of the new emerging theme, because jealousy is rife within the soul of a lot of people who could not arise by the requirement, which was virtue and having the cognizance and the ability to use gnosis and the spirit for the benefit of the community. Because you cannot be inclusive, you continued your exclusivity, which is your selfishness. And so where is your jurisprudence established? You are not from this land. You invaded this land. You expropriate the resources. So you take away our land, water, air, rights. Land, air, and water. Law. You've taken away our rights. You've subjugated us and oppressed us and has educated us as robots, as you call, taking the Slavic Germanic terminology for slave, for the Slavic people, and which is really to mean that but a real slave is a robot, an automaton program that has no soul, because soul reacts to the condition, not to programming. So you can program a slave always by telling him, Jesus Christ will not love you for doing that, but you kill that person because he tried to rape your child. And they put you in a judicial system until you have a legal right to convict you if you cannot prove that it was in self-defense. So let's look at natural law, because we've gone a lot in no more taxes. The natural law is placated around the immutable law of creation, the law that governs behaviors like eating, sleeping, drinking, all of those things, right? If you put certain things in the body, it will destroy the body. So there's a law to biology, right? If you take certain things from one end of the body and put it through the other end, you will practically toxify and make the thing corrupt and unclean, right? Unclean is a philosophy, but it's actually a fact. So when they talk about unclean as a spirit, people say, what is that? Unclean is something that is unclean, that is filthy. And the dark forces love filthiness. So we say unclean, unnatural, ungodly. They are not in alignment with the unchangeable divine laws of natural being. So we understand there is a law in which you treat your being. You do not toxify, nor destroy your being, nor destroy the being of another. These things go into sacrilege, right? And so we understand there's a law of being, a law of causality, of cause and effect. And there's also a law of harmonization. So the law of harmonization states that once there becomes separation, when things become two or subdivided, then the harmony is lost. because the harmony in seeing the oneness, and the oneness is not seen in the singularity of the first person. You know, like I'm in this, I and I. It's I know. I'm the greatest, you know. It is seeing in the greater, the I and I. In that, in the greater is the one. Why? Because in spatial understanding, if you look at a flock of swallows going through the sky, you see a ethereal but yet an ephemeral shape, a form that happens from them adjusting to the air pressure, and they move and create forms in design spatially. Well, the humans are the same. The spiritual beings, the living beings are the same, right? So every ant colony moves on a singularity that spatially is observed when you move away from the individual and see the collective. So humans have a oneness, and that oneness is understood through art, spirituality, or philosophy, which underpins all forms. Like my fingers are really my hand. Because recently I was having an issue with my hand, and I was trying to massage my hand. And I'm saying my hand, but I really want to show you this is what I was talking about. And I'm saying I'm massaging my finger to get the circulation. My spirit says to me, you must massage, that's not your finger. It's your hand that is out of alignment. So you say finger as to denote, as to connote, sorry, finger being separate from hand. But what absurdity! It is your hands which are out of alignment. Fingers aren't separate from hands. Hands aren't separate, hallelujah, from feet, from head, or from speech. We call that body language. 60% of communication, according to their 666 models, because they love use the 6. So we could say 70, we could say 80% of communication is body language. That's why gestures, gesticulation, is also the same as inflection and intonation in speech. It is gesticulation, but it is gested, gesture, ingest, right? Ingestion is the same thing as eating. So why is these things important? They're immutable, unalienable laws, the laws of being. The laws of harmonization says we're not supposed to separate ourselves along the different forms, color, racism, right? Cultural prejudice, right? Ethnic prejudices, right? Because people speak in a certain intonation, because their skin tone is darker, because they grow here, because they don't believe what you believe. All these things are not lawful and are not under the construct of the hallelujah divine and natural law. So natural law operates on the emotions and the spirit. When you do something that is out of alignment with what is right, there's a thing called a conscience, right? We refer to it as a conscience, but some would say it's the inner man or the spirit, acknowledging it is out of alignment with the actual spiritual law that is the inalienable law, which is the natural law of God. And that law is where we say we share for each other, we care for each other, we protect each other, and we operate as the highest construct we know, and that construct is called family. And family, when it is transposed into the highest context, it is called a community, and it is communal. And so then when we talk about communal, we talk about commune. And so commune is communication, and it is also gathering. It's not pilgrimage, people. But pilgrimage is part of the commune because why? The family would have been scattered far away, and so they have to commune to together. They have to do the commute rather in the commune, because commute is also part of it. You have to commute to the community, right? For the commune, which is where the communication. What is that? That is the continued socialization of tradition. That is customary. So customs are under natural laws, where you get the rites of passage that has been enshrined in spiritual and religious behaviors in the Aboriginal communities. What we call our like becoming a man or woman, you know, those rites of passage. They're all called rites of passages, but by different term. I think I'm not going to call any of them by terms because you can understand what I'm saying. So these rites of passages throughout all the different cultures suggest that the human, the spiritual being, we're using human because human still don't mean, human is a monster, unconscious person, but we're still using terms that I know that you will understand. If I say all the denotive linguistics, you will not understand everything I'm saying, which is some pure theoretics, right? All right, so they understand that, well, the human, is still going to operate underneath certain connotative structures. And so, they're still looking to the systems of authority and the systems of, religion and spirituality, right? That they see as the basis to balance the understanding. So, under natural law, that spiritual system is the actual traditions, is the actual way of life, is the actual generational knowledge, generational gnosis, best practices. That's where the law is, because the tenure of the law is in the natural being, the living being, right? And that is not enshrined under nomotaxis, because nomotaxis would be for the straw man, right? For the fictitious person, for the corporation, the dead speech, not for a spiritual being. So then when you're a spiritual being and you use connotative linguistics, like saying human, when you really mean a spiritual being or a living being, right? You realize that there's a crossing of wires, and there's always translation, because that's where the whole thing about legalese comes in, or the law comes in, so that there can now be someone in the polyglot sense now to say, well, linguistically, etymologically, this particular word has 5 meanings. What is its origin? So if I speak it as an Aboriginal, the original meaning must be, especially as it relates to something that is alive, has to be verbiage, has to be a verb. And if it's a representative relation, it has to be a proper noun, cannot be an adjective. So we cannot refer to the actual living being as a state that takes away all your rights, and then enshrine that state as your character, your personality, and then expect of you to behave like a serf and a ward, to then be presentable to a structure under edict, under policy, under politics. And when you fall short, what happens? There's another thing, it's called prison. Prison is what happened. So because all of it has to be forced, because if you do not agree and you resist, then you're forced, compulsory, mandatory. So all these forces, once you resist and then err in some way or the other, they imprison you, which is another force of confinement. And then here is the wickedest thing. With that force of confinement, all of the fragments of any kind of rights you had were suspended. So if it was civil liter mortuus, right? Well, impropria persona so juris would be at its highest level here. Impropria persona so juris would be at its highest rejection for the imprisoned Aboriginal. Because it's pure nom de guerre is going to happen, because you cannot operate in your own person no more, because you're a body belonging to the mercantile. No longer, you're human, you're no longer a living being. You're a corporation, you're dead speech, right? You're property. You are no longer able to be represented of yourself. So, impropria persona so juris, you cannot operate business and truly gather generational wealth, because nom de guerre, operating in another man's name, fraudulent conversions, straw men, not a real person, a corporation, a fiction. And so this nom de guerre personality, thinking you can gather wealth. So when the currents of Rome come for you, you have to join the lodges, because they promise to take you up out the grave and remove you from the state of civil litter mortuus remove you from the death, civil death, legal death. It's all a game, people. So when you're in your right mind, you are trading corporation, or you've established a trading corporation through consular courts under universal commercial code. That's how now your business operates, under universal commercial codes. Because now you can take control of your straw man. Because your straw man is a corporation. That's why I'm not Jerome Butler. It's legal fiction. But as I said in several videos, am I going to relinquish my power of attorney over a state that I've expressed consciously and unconsciously through the mercantile? I love value too. And though fiat isn't money, I know money is in my reality. I'm wealthy beyond measure, hallelujah, and I know that. But we are dealing with the mercantile. And until I can get my case, just like all Aboriginal people, into the right jurisdiction to be heard for a lot of my intellectual property that I spoke to YouTube and all these places that I'm not paid for, my qualified, qualitative, quantitative philosophies that originated by me, and so much Aboriginals that's going to be patented and licensed by these de facto under fraudulent conversion, stealing our birthrights, our estates, pushing us on the fringes, calling others by our name, calling us by the name of others, reclassify, resocialize. The law of nature and the law of God is immutable as the sun, moon, and stars, and are as prevailing and as pervasive. So once you are constant, you establish your reality. It's cosmic as well too. You speak the word into being. So I'm not depoled. You will not find Talaku the Great Owl registered as a mercantile, because I'm not. But when you come in to deal with me on trade and consular relation, Talaku the Great Owl, hallelujah, is what I'm going to write on that. That's when you actually see me as who I am. I'm not an errand boy that you can call and speak to in any manner because you've got your gang of legalisms and psychotic euphemisms to back you. So when they talk about it is mandatory, authorized, approved, question all those. Because in these three branches of government, their policies, their arguments are coercion. The art of coercion, that's what they study, the Marxists and the Leninists and all of the Hegels and all the Hegelian philosophies. European pedagogy. That's what they study. The cunning control of our experiences. They divide and they conquer. They divide and they rule. Just like they've got us working in the Industrial Revolution. Well, we're in the post-industrial revolution, but in the Industrial Revolution, the post-industrial revolution, the pre-industrial revolution, they had you planting cotton and or native tobacco on the plantation. So we call that plantation economy, plantocracy after abolition, prison economy in the 21st century. So plants, the plantation, from planting in the plantation, being planted, to the plantocracy, the plants in the industrial age, the manufacturing plants. You were back on the plantation. The erudite instructional was lost because that is again generational best practices. Do you understand? It is hereditary. It is just sanguineous, consanguineous. But you don't respect your grandfather, the one that is aboriginal. How you know the difference? We have a style, we say, house slave, feel slave, house slave, feel slave, house slave, feel slave. So if your grandfather is a field slave, then certain things he would have naturally passed on versus house slave passed on European pedagogy. And so if a field slave, the people out there in the plantation, plantocracy, plantation economy struggle their way through to have the clarity to be sovereign, they speak different and they pass on more than material value to their children. The erudite wisdom of the generation is what they pass on. Best practices, tried and proven, principles that you should apply to continue. By God's grace, I never got none from none of my family. So that I never get the descendable hallelujah knowledge. But give thanks, the descendable knowledge never came through the physical ancestors, the spiritual ancestors, hallelujah. They took me, like I said, and I always got visions and dreams and they educated me. So we talk about the corporation status, like countries being corporations, like under una sanctum law through treaties and the establishment of the papal bulls, the many dumb divorces, right, by Pope Nicholas on the fifth, right, and it's his subsequent letting loose of these so-called noblest families of Europe, which are really some of them are mostly half-breeds, Moriscos and Morenos, who are angry at the real Moriscos and Morenos who are the rule, Morocco, so that even they come to the vassal states and now they couldn't give up Casablanca so much that they had to call the District of Columbia High Point, the White House, or Capitol Hill. So the Cottonwigs, Democrats, and the consigned Whigs, Republicans, the American Trade and Commerce Corporation taking up the role of saying that they are the republic. Well, they're really a democracy, which is really a democracy. We know that because we already analyze it and break it down in patois. So they're presenting a false state, right? De facto, not de jure. So it's not just sanguineous. It's not from our bloodline. So it's not a government. It is not a government. It's a trading corporation. Hallelujah. Not a government. But anyway, we have also become traded chattel and property, and we are traded all the time on the human stock bond certification system. We call it the birth certificate. And so we're traded in blocks. And you find that under these trade banners, right, we are made to lose our rights of estate and loss of this. I don't want to figure this out. To take a look at intellectual generational rights and intellectual property rights that are generational, like to our medicines that have been reverse engineered and claimed by the mercantile as being their own product. Well, those things are unlawful, right? You've never had a generational experience of using, let's say, peyote or any of these particular things in any manner towards remedy. But you can come and study through the departments of tropical medicine and research and basically expropriate generational knowledge, while at the same time through UNESCO and all these cultural organizations putting our heritage into a glass box out there and pretending like you care about our people. You understand me? Oh, what a one world system of divide and rule. The greatest arm of civilita meritus is that they speak to us as though we are property on the plantation economy, because we've been reclassified Negro, colored, black, Afro-Caribbean, and all that. but our wards of the states, but like within the Algonquians, the Gullah-Geechee, those that were fighting, still are fighting in some way, are the ones like myself who have suffered the most. I've never really ever made any money from anything I did. The most money I made was many, many, many years ago, right? And it was during the mercantile time working. I did a commercial Malibu banana coconut ad. It was the most money I've ever made. Still, I've never passed that. And that's been almost 20 years, right? So when we talk about the plantation economy, there's something we call the housing scheme or the planned scheme, and it's the word scheme, and housing developments are the so-called middle income, median gated community. And that started with the plantation housing, because plantation housing was just the design of having some shacks and some shanties for the enslaved Aboriginals to work on your every wild fantasy, suffer generational harm and destruction. So that was all that was. The plantation housing was just really the shacks that was laid up in like hogstyle, which is the creation of what we know as ghettos. We never lived in ghettos, so that's where ghettos come from, especially in our Aboriginal experience. So the plantation housing became now transposed after apprenticeship times, after the so-called abolition, so-called apprenticeship now, where they said, okay, we got the feudal system just like in Europe now, which is called sharecropping. You work the land, but you don't make no money because you basically can only break even, or you're gonna borrow owe me money, and we deposit, layaway, credit schemes. All those things started there in the Aboriginal community after they took you off of your land, took you off of your own farming, told you came from another place, told you have no right to the land, took you off your actual homeland. I mean, took you out of the fields for yourself under mandates and edicts from a foreign government, right? And said that you now, under their state, have to work to serve their worldview, which is to make tobacco and sugar and corn. What you developed for thousands of years here in the Americas, in Atlanteans, you now have to expose it to the dark world, which is to Europe, to bring them into enlightenment, all of the precious minerals, ores, and everything. So after the abolition, so-called, the plantation housing began, which is a little bit better shanty that was kind of just a little better slashed along the river banks and such. And that is the beginning of the gated communities today, plantation housing, that at some points when they needed to build, like in Alabama and Louisiana, these communities expropriate the tobacco, the cotton, and the sweet potato at certain points. They build these little things that they became the contemporary projects and ghettos with these high-rise buildings. And so why is that important? Because the plantation housing maintained the plantocracy, the plantation economy, which is now the prison economy, because the mandates go against natural law, because they provide no opportunity. And Professor Francis Cress Welsing, can talk about the psychological states of Europeans who concoct to their genetic recessive genes this ideology of superiority, and so they undereducate you because obviously they stole from you and they're gaining from you. So because of the mandates and other things, but the lack of rights, land rights, water rights, air rights, rights that transform into wood, precious minerals, oil, or without the right to use those things to advance your family, what we call poverty, and all of the psychological status Cresswell Singh described that they talk about, and the intellects, they believe this, by the way, they believe that we are deficient than they are, and that we are inferior because it is case study pedagogy and written into academia, into tenureship. So their false analysis, their malicious analysis forms the basis of the legal treatment of individuals who refer to themselves as black under Christian black codes, have made themselves property. You can go look up the code noirs if you want to know, right? Has made themselves property, non-descendable, so you cannot leave a will and be able to put property down. The same plantation economy of the present, the prison economy, because people cannot provide for themselves, they break these policies and mandates, and hence go right back into the worst level of chattel slavery called the prison economy. Field slave, house slaves live in the housing developments, the housing projects, the housing schemes, the high-rise schemes, the ghetto, the Section 8, and now the middle-class gated community, all from the plantation housing module, all meaning that they are wards and serfs of the state. There's a security guard placed outside, and you're just as much held at ransom being inside the gated community as the person outside, especially because of the racist topography and distribution of spatial design. The best places European occupy. And so when so-called Aboriginals, but they're not Aboriginal, they're really black because they're sold out the strawman, through the strawman, when they gain a little fiat, they want to move into these white neighborhoods because of the better treatment. And so they know in the middle class, median, gated communities are treated just the same because of the policy of racism. It's a culture. It's a culture. It's not about your ability or the lack thereof. You thought you lacked ability. You are undereducated. You don't know your culture. You don't know history. So you are operating from a deficient mindset, then going to people who are benefiting from a superior mindset based upon your deficiency, because your deficiency creates the superiority and creates this idea that they have an authority, hallelujah, over you, because you believe them and you follow them, and you do not organize along the path of just sanguinos, de jure government. You do not organize. You do not like social activism. You don't want to speak with people that are educated. You just want to hear Jesus, Selassie, Allah, Buddha, or whatever religious titles that is placated before your consciousness. And so that the prison economy has moved to private prisons where you have artists and musicians who are singing, so that singing violence, dismissive, destructive lyrics to return their families, their generations, their kin, their ethnicity into chattel slavery. Because they want them, according to who pays these house niggers, these house slaves, they want them to bring the majority of the people back into the plantation economy. And young black males, the bastion of masculinity, is the biggest target, next to young black females, who are supposed to be the producers of the raw material called black babies to fuel this prison, hallelujah, economy through rap and all of the filthy, nasty, sexually charged, unclean sexual behavior that is promoted. Please check out my videos, Kinematic Masters of Deception, on this channel. I did 3 or 4 of them to have some context before you come forward to watch this video if you're having a problem with understanding a lot of this reclassification terminology. So like I said, you have the Contel Pro people, they're amongst Rasta, the Moorish, all the Aboriginals, right? And all of these entities, they're amongst them, right? They're there to confuse and distort the truth so that people like me seems like we're off kilter and whatever, because I don't care about that, because sackcloth and ashes has been the statement that follows the true trumpet bearers and the people who really are in the midst of clarity. It's not a nice place to be, because you are clarified, because you were crushed and smashed like butter, but somehow held your structure together, and that's divine. And that is something our ancestors, our true heirs, our true forebearers of Midgard, right, has given unto us. So we have to continue to go for just sanguinos, de jure policies from the consanguinity of blood. Return to your ethnic, customary, communal, traditional identities that are not through Admiralty, not through European or trans-Americanism, but through Pan-Americanism. And please know, an Aboriginal American different from a European American, different from a Siberian American, or those that came up from Tartaria, the Romanov Americans, right, calling themselves Native Americans, right? You have to know these things to understand, overstand the clarity of history, to understand the nature of our existence. It's very important. It's very, very important. And that is why we're still impoverished And that is why those who call themselves the Boule and all these wealthy, so-called black would have never contributed to the upliftment of the Aboriginal community. And that's why any of those that get close to it are called crazy, like Kanye West. Notice I'm not speaking religiously, so you can quote me on that. Those who are not playing by their rules, like Kanye West, will be deemed crazy. I was already called crazy, but I have no money. So nobody cares about some stupid designs I do. Who gives a crap? Right? Big up Virgil Abloh, right? Rest his soul in peace. Who gives a crap? But I do. And I give thanks for the people who have helped me to come forward to clarity. So as we recognize that as Aboriginals, we should be very much aware of our land, air, and water rights and be able to stand up for those rights. But first, we have to be aware of our families, our actual Aboriginal, Taino, Hamakan community here in Jamaica and all across the islands of terra firma, all across the islands of Atlantis here on terra firma. We have to harmonize our true heritage, our true history, our true place in reality before we can then take our policy, not as indigenous nation, right? But as original nations, as aboriginals. It's stages. We have a lot to go. That learning and re-education campaign, the erudite campaign of edification is on in earnest, and I am trying my best. I love those who stay on the path of Yeshua, who actually break through the looking glass to come to the side where truth is seen and you're not inverted into confusion, right? And because the inversion is upon you, you are looking at yourself and don't even, hallelujah, recognize that it's you. That's what they do all the time. And it breeds self-hate and jealousy and all other stuff that suffers people like me. That sometimes the greatest haters for people like me, they actually look like me. The plants, again, the plantation, the plants, because we call them plants, that they put on these networks, is to stop people like me. I'm not a YouTuber, people. I'm an Aboriginal activist, hallelujah. I've always been. I'm a Bonneville, me I defend. I'm a estate, me I defend. I'm a bootelier. So those who know that I'm a bootelier. My cousins are the stewards. I'll leave it at that. You know what's up. You have stolen so much. You thought all of us and all the Merovingians are died off. That's what you, hallelujah, think. Aren't you thinking these things? Isn't that what you're saying to yourself? Sitting in other people's stead, operating as other people. All the servants have just become so pompous, haven't they? Class is divine, not a matter of socialization or adaptation. So until next time, this has been Talaku, the Great Owl, the Sonoro Rojo, just reminding you, hallelujah, of the truth of our Aboriginal heritage here on terra firma. Blessings.